Fruitful Living with Sissel Anderson. Here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm Keith Downey, and have you ever given up your smartphone for a couple days? I haven't, but even if you, like me, have not, Sissel Anderson has, and she's going to share with us all about it and really why we should be letting go and letting God work more in our lives. Good morning, Sissel.
Good morning, Keith. It's great to be with you. And I do love how you introduced me about giving up my phone. I would just like to say it wasn't voluntarily, okay? Captain Butterfingers over here dropped it off the top floor of my house.
Oh, no.
And it quite died.
Oh.
This was last weekend, so not this like a couple days ago, but the weekend before that. I was getting ready for some friends coming over and made the mistake, and I should know myself better, of leaning over the stairwell for a second to send a text, and then my brain went, this is a bad idea, you should like step away, and I did, but as I did that, the phone slipped out of my hands, and the case did nothing for it, and it had like the doom of half the screen, like all lines, and and I was like, uh-oh. And that was Saturday evening, and I was like, well, that's a little bit unfortunate. I know I have a problem with like, clinging to my phone too much, so I was like, this is gonna be great, but I also in the back of my mind was like, Monday morning share-a-thon, this is not great to not have a phone. So I thought, but it's okay, I'll just go to the store tomorrow, the Apple store, see if they can help me transfer it over to an old phone or something. Ended up being a lot more of a headache than I was intending, and so I almost didn't have a phone for about 2 days. Wow. And so, which probably people are like, oh wow, that's like so tragic. It's not, it's really not. But it did point out to me how much and I'm sure a lot of us listening, rely heavily on our phones. I mean, what do you think about it? My phone is my alarm clock usually. My phone is how I get to my destinations. It's, it's my maps. I always have my maps up to see if there's traffic or something. It's where I manage, like, my bank accounts. Like, I can ask any question to my phone to get, like, who was in this movie, 1984 or whatever. There's nothing left to chance when you have your phone, right? Like, we can do everything. Because when we talk about phones, I think what is frequently brought up is like how they can be a waste of time. There's a lot of dangers with like the internet and social media for our mindsets, for our kids. But I think what might be one of the bigger problems when it comes to the phone is that we become so dependent on it that it leaves like no opportunity for us to trust God. And I think that's really sad. I get it because we're in an era, like, I understand where we love to be able to, be able to communicate with everyone immediately and not have to worry about where they are. My siblings and I, when we get to a certain place at like, 11:30 at night, if one of us is not home, we send out the "Are you alive?" text, or even better, you could have like Life 360 and you can track them and just see what are they doing in Fort Worth? What are they doing? Whatever it may be. And there's some anxiety about not knowing certain things, but there's also some beauty in it because we're able to really trust God. I did freak my sister out a little bit while I didn't have a phone. She kept being like, you should take my phone. And I'm like, no, then you're going to be without a phone. I'll be fine because I had a lot of things to do on Sunday. And I literally had to write on my hand the left and right turns to where church I was going to. So that I wouldn't get lost. And then I forgot because I ran into a friend after Mass that I didn't have a phone and couldn't just send a quick text to my sister being like, by the way, I'll be a little late coming home. And so she's sitting there at home being like, she should be home by now. Where is she? But we think about it. We just like completely give up any form of like just letting go of, and whatever happens, happens, and trusting that God will take care of it. It's convenience to the point of complacency. And I don't know, Keith, if this is like speaking to you at all, but it's something that it's always been heavily on my mind, but especially when I didn't have my phone, I actually really, really enjoyed it. Yeah. Not from the standpoint of I knew that there was a lot of work and things that would be really challenging without a phone. However, I really enjoyed just kind of going by the whim of whatever happens and relying on, my sister asked, like, what happens if you have get into an accident, you have a car problem and you don't have a phone? And I was like, well, I'm going to have to rely on the kindness of a stranger. We just don't think like that anymore. We just don't do that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm of the age where it was like before the like smartphone, where we heavily rely on like maps. Where originally if we had to go anywhere, we just went to MapQuest.com,
Yes, MapQuest.
printed out like 3 sheets, and yeah, if you missed a turn, then you're like, okay, how do I get back to that one? Okay, I'm glad I printed out like a portion of the map, although it's not like that big. So like you had to really live intentionally. Like you had to plan things out. Like, okay, I'm going to be going this way. I'm just going to print this out, or I need to send an email or check my bank account. I have to do this while I'm at home. And yeah, I think it also helps us live more in the present time because we didn't have all of this access at our fingertips, which we do now. So when we don't have it, it's like, what do we do with ourselves? And I think that's a great way that you kind of go back to our relationship with God. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because something kind of similar happened with my wife's phone. And we have like a backup phone that's also broken, and it's an old phone. It's an old iPhone, and you can't really do much of it aside from text and call. And so she kind of experienced that in a manner too, where she wasn't able to like browse really well on without having to wait like 5 minutes for a website to load. So it really did help her in a way as well.
Yeah, and this last week, while I was waiting for my new phone, because unfortunately the phone I ordered was taking quite a while to arrive, and so during like Share-a-thon, very graciously a family at my church offered an older phone for me to use, and I was able to get it like at least get my contacts so I could call people, which is amazing. But I didn't have most of my apps. I'd have to download everything, and it made me really think about like what do I actually need on my phone. And I was talking to someone after a mass, and I was talking about how, man, it just made me, not having my phone made me want to, I've always threatened to like go to a flip phone or something and just, kind of quote unquote go off grid, which is really funny because you can totally still call me and text me, but go off grid and not have complete access to the internet wherever I go. But even this person, who's older than me, was saying, oh, well, that's just, unfortunately, the way we are now, that's just not possible to even like go that direction because we're such in a place where everything is relying on the phone and everyone's relying on being able to have access to whatever they need, whenever they need it. And so I don't know. I think it might be a good exercise, though, because, okay, I will admit that I think as much as I would like, let's all go back to flip phones or something, I don't think that's probably going to happen anytime soon. I mean, we have flip phones again, but there's the smart flip phones, the ones with like the screens and everything. But it's not quite the same, not quite what I'm thinking.
Right.
However, I think it would be a good exercise in trust and, letting go would be maybe deleting a few of those apps that you really think that you need, that you really, really think you rely on quite heavily, and just try for a week and see how bad was it that I didn't have this on my phone. And how bad, like, honestly, deleting things like Amazon or any other like buying app probably would be extremely helpful if you had to wait till you got to a computer to actually pay for it because you might not maybe buy as much as what you don't need. So I don't know, maybe a practice that people could try, because it makes me think of this psalm. It was early in the Psalms. I think it's Psalm 3, where it's like, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And like all your ways, submit to him and he will make straight your path. Like, it's very simple and very clear. And I think when we rely so heavily on our phones, we're just not allowing that trusting in God to happen, because we're in a culture today where everything has to be just so. Everything has to be like for my comfort, for my ease of mind. Like, I need to make sure I have this many alarms set in the morning. I need to make sure that I have access to, whatever it is I need. And that can really spill over into our spiritual life, because if you think about it, then when we go to prayer time, we might be sitting here going, well, everything has to be just right and just perfect for me to be able to sit and talk with God. And I'm like, listen, life is always going to be a little bit crazy, just a little bit. I'm 26. I don't even have kids. And I know life can be extremely crazy. And you have to just kind of go along with that crazy and be adaptable and be at peace and just be able to take your prayer time whenever and wherever you're able to, and not maybe have everything just perfect in your environment.
That's so true. It's really interesting too. I don't know if you've seen it more in your group, your age range, but I've been noticing a trend of people trying to go back to the flip phones. It's like the cool thing to do now, I guess.
It is. There's something growing, and it's actually, I want to say, more of a Generation Z thing, which is funny. That's my generation. So not like the most latest generation, not the millennials, but I think it's because that generation really got to see the change when phones came about. Like, I know I'm was blessed to come from a family that didn't keep up with the Joneses, so I didn't get my first smartphone as soon as they came out. I had a flip phone, and it was a really funny situation because it was tied to one of my dad's business lines, and so because of that, people couldn't call me because it would forward to him, but I could call them, and they could text me, and I could text them. But that's what I had for about 2 or 3 years, actually. It was a long time before I had we call it a half phone. And so I had a flip phone and a couple like the slide phones that I really enjoyed, but they didn't have internet access. It was literally just texting and taking pictures. And that's all that teenager Sissel really needed. And it wasn't probably until I was like 16, 17 that I actually got a smartphone. And that was when things changed. And I can recognize in my life how damaging, having that really was. And so I think there are a lot of people who just wish it didn't exist. And I also wish it didn't exist. However, we do have to recognize the times that we're living in. And I think it's a better practice of self-control, of learning how to not let the phone control you, not let the anxiety overwhelm you, and just simplify your phone and use it and not let it use you.
In the news earlier, Matt talked about Meta basically having an Instagram teen account to kind of restrict and, quote unquote, enhance the safety. Do you think that could help teens that have access to this be more mindful of like their prayer time with God?
It could definitely be something very helpful. I have a friend of mine who has kids who are getting into the teen years, and she has a pretty firm no social media in my house while you're living under my roof, because she has seen the damage in her own life of like towards her own body image and other things, just like how dangerous it is. So she just found it not worthwhile. So I think it kind of depends on, the family has to make that decision. You have to decide, is this going to help, putting it into a mode, is this going to help me or is this going to hinder me? If it's going to hinder you, you cut it off. That's what the Bible says.
That's your smartphone. Cut your smartphone and your children's smartphones off. Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much, Sissel, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on every single Wednesday. We can also catch you as producer for Back to the Father Friday afternoons on YouTube at 1 p.m. Central. You're also the host of Young and Present in Dallas, so make sure to keep an eye on that on our YouTube page, GRN Online. And that's the end of our first hour. So if you're going to be listening to the Holy Mass, keep us in your prayers. We'll keep yours and ours. And my goodness, we have a completely incredible second hour coming up next, where we're talking with the CEO and co-founder of Candid Dating, a Catholic dating service. But we'll take a quick break here and return with you on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.